My name is Michelle Acker, and I'm the Vice President of the Student National Education Association. I will be serving as the facilitator for tonight's session, and I will be monitoring the chat box throughout. My co-host tonight is Kylie Jackson. Before we continue, I would like to go over a few housekeeping rules. Please keep your mic muted, type all of your questions into the chat box, and there will be time during the presentation dedicated to the questions. Today's presentation will be led by Brevard County Public Schools, and introducing our speakers tonight is Mike Alba. Without further ado, the School of Teacher Education and Student National Education Association presents Communicating with Parents.
All right, thank you. Thanks for the introduction, and it's great to see some familiar names and faces jumping into our session this evening. So we're excited about this topic, and I believe it's one of these night ed talks where kind of spurred the idea to reach out to my friends in the district who are an expert in this topic. But you know, we had asked you all, you know, what were some things that you guys were anxious about, getting ready to start a career in education. And one of the things that was consistent with many of the candidates was just how to have positive relationships with parents. So we were very excited to have two friends here in our district. We have a parent, family, community engagement resource teachers. They're funded through Title I, I believe, but I will make sure that at least maybe one. All right, so one of them is. So I don't want to say too much, but I'm going to turn it over to Jenny Gleason and Javon Blum, who has put together a great presentation for you. So that way, hopefully you'll feel more comfortable and more empowered when you're trying to have those positive relationships with parents. So I'll turn it over to them.
Thank you so much, Mr. Alba. And we are thrilled to be here with you because we really believe with all our hearts, if you work on that parent relationship, you will really open the door to success for your students. And we really hope that after this presentation, you'll see why. And that's sort of what we hope to do today, is show you the why and give you a little bit of the how.
And just know that what we're going to present this, I mean, we could talk to you guys for probably 2 semesters on the importance of family and the nuances and the things to try and not to try. So we've got so much in this presentation. So we're not trying to kill you by PowerPoint. We're just trying to hit all the highs and the lows. So we may get to every slide, we may have a conversation, but just know if you want us to come back, we'll do more.
Yes, and we want to come back. So we'll just say that right now. We definitely would want to come back and take a deeper dive. So we like to start out with a little bit of a smile.
Jack up your volume, Jenny.
Whoops. Let's try that again. There's my, okay, sorry. It's up as loud as it'll go. Let's try that again.
You might have to share the video with audio. Is there an option for that?
Yeah, when you shared your screen, those little boxes.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today. Call or visit Father.
So we really believe that all family relationships are important. And I found this video years ago when I was working with our Head Start program. And one of the focuses Head Start had was they were trying to bring fathers back in and get them engaged. And guess what we found out? We found out that fathers did want to be engaged, but nobody had ever invited them. They said things like, I didn't know I could come in. I didn't know that fathers could come and have lunch with their children. So as teachers, always remember, don't assume your parents know these things, because they truly don't. So this is you, Javon.
And we talk over each other the whole time. So Don't be
Sorry.
surprised. That's okay. It's okay. We talk about who's going to do what, and then we get into it and we forget. So here's part of the why. When you guys, and some of you are already teaching and some of you are not, but when you get into it, you're going to see that you have got data coming out of your ears from all these assessments, all these programs, and they're letting you know the highs and lows and where they need to be. And you will work your tails off. Like, you are going to try to do everything you possibly can for those students in front of you. And a lot of times what we forget, that missing link, is to engage our families. They really do have an impact on student achievement. There's research out there. The problem is family engagement is a little bit messy. It takes an effort. It's not something that you can just, put a kid on a computer for 10 minutes and then, solve all the world's problems. It really does require building that partnership and that relationship with those families and communicating exactly what their engagement looks like, because it's going to be different for every family. I love this this graph, and this comes from WestEd, from a program that they have called Academic Parent Teacher Teams, or referred to as APTT. And if we talk fast enough, I'll be able to show you what that looks like. But what hits home is when you look at this graph, this is a typical day of a student, and you'll see that 57% of their day is spent away from school. And when you're in the classroom, it feels like you have them for 100 hours of the day. And really, it's such a small part of their daily routine. Only 10% really is spent at school, and the other 33% is spent sleeping. So this graph, just what you should take away from this, I hope, is that there's lots of missed opportunities. So harnessing some of that outside of school time is going to impact student engagement and achievement. Jenny, you're mute.
Javon and I love to do this activity when we do faculty meetings. And usually this is the time when we say, okay, everybody get up and move around. Well, sorry, we're not going to give you that opportunity. I mean, you can if you want, but it might be a little weird. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask you this question, and it's called Four Corners. And what we would have you do is, if you disagree, you go in one corner. If you strongly disagree, another corner, etc. So and we'd ask a question, and here's our question for us today. I believe all parents care about their child's success in school. So what we'd like you to do, our group is small enough that we would really love you to unmute and share your thoughts. So we'd really like you to do that. And I can stop sharing so we can.
And it's a no judgment zone. This is completely safe. This is based on, your experiences. There's no right or wrong answers.
So what do you think?
So the question again was, I believe all parents care about their child's success in school. Any brave souls?
Can I go?
Please.
Okay. So personally, like idealistically, I like to think that all parents do care about their child's education. To some extent, you're going to care because you're sending them to school. So you're going to have some investment in it, assumedly. But I know that there are apparently, like, I've seen, like, there are some students who say that their parents just don't care. And then there's some parents who just really don't care. And it's like, well, my child's going to get a job. It doesn't really matter, his education. So that's my take.
Thanks for sharing that. We appreciate it. Who else? Yes.
My take's kind of similar. I think that caring doesn't mean what they care about specifically, like certain aspects, certain points, certain ways they participate in their child's education and the way the child succeeds. But overall, the caring is there, even if it's different than what we typically think caring about a child's education success looks like.
Great. Great. And I love that word, caring. I think you're right. Parents do care.
Jenny, we had some in the chat. Can you see the chat?
I can.
Do you want me to read them, or you got
Yes, I want you to read them.
Okay, here we go. Melissa says she agrees, but not strongly agrees, because some homes don't value education as much as others.
Okay.
Okay.
Good point.
And Hannah's at work. We appreciate you being here and listening anyway. But she says she She disagrees because some parents just send their kids to school because they look at it as a daycare type thing.
Okay, great. Well, we appreciate you guys sort of sharing your thoughts. And so the other piece of this is that it's sort of a no judgment zone. And what we're hoping is as we move through our presentation today, maybe your thinking may change or evolve. So we shall see. All right.
Okay, so here's what's changed in the last, I'd say, 10 years, as working with parents has really become an area of focus at our schools. And we used to think of it as parent involvement, and you're going to hear a lot of people still use that term, and it's not wrong. It's just not the most politically correct or not the most current term to use reference when working with families in the classroom. So involvement, that's basically parents come to the school when you ask them to. They'll volunteer, PTO, hand out ice cream, those types of things. If that's parent involvement, they're involved in the day-to-day, workings of a school. They come when you ask, and that's about it. But what we're really looking for, where the change maker is when it becomes family engagement. So we've changed parent to family to acknowledge that our students are living in homes where the adult caregiver is not necessarily a parent. It could be a sibling, a cousin, an aunt, a foster person, a grandparent. We have tons of grandparents raising children these days. So that's encompassing them. It's not, when you just say parent, sometimes those non-parent figures think, well, they're not talking to me because I'm not the mom, I'm not the dad, so I'm not going to go. So family hopefully is a little more inclusive. And then engagement is actually combining your quality instruction in your classroom with teaching your families how to support that instruction at home and really focusing on increasing student achievement, increasing their learning, not bringing in muffins to raise money for the PTO, but really to impact the success of their child at that grade level. Karen Mapp, if you haven't had a chance to check her out, she is the guru of family engagement. And what Jenny and I love about her is that she's the real deal. She started out as just a mom who probably did the bake sales in the classroom and just saw that more was needed of her and from other parents. And she rose up through the ranks, working as a parent liaison at her children's school, and then becomes an assistant superintendent of family engagement in the Boston Public School System, which is pretty amazing. So she really walks the talk, and we love her. So she's done a couple of videos, but what we love about this one is just like 3 things that as an educator, if you could just keep in mind as you go throughout your career, how you're going to be much more successful at involving I say use the wrong word, engaging your families.
So my 3 tips for educators would be, 1, that when you are trying to improve your practice when it comes to family engagement, that you have to really examine your core beliefs about your families. How do you see the families in the community? Do you look at them through a deficit lens that perhaps you don't see that they have strengths, or do you look at them as assets, people who have knowledge and skills that you really need to be an effective educator? The second tip, it would be that change the communication from being about negative news or bad news to positive news. And so I always say to teachers especially, make those first phone calls home, especially at the beginning of the year, about positive information, or text things about what the child is doing that's good. A lot of families tell me that the only time they hear from the school is with when it's bad news. And then I think the third piece would be to really think about making those communications about academics and not about discipline. So it sort of goes with number 2, but more specifically, when you're talking to families, let them know what their children should know and be able to do. Families really want to know that information. They don't want to just know that Johnny's been a good boy, or that Susie, is nice, because a lot of my family say that's the kind of feedback we get, where your child is nice. They want to know, what should they know and be able to do in October and in January and June? And they want to help you get there. So I would say that those would be the three things, the three tidbits that I'd like to share with educators of how they can do something different with their families.
She's fantastic. What I forgot to tell you is that she is now at Harvard, and she runs their family and community engagement research division. And you may or may not have seen her dual capacity framework that she's put together with Ann Henderson. So she's the big person in this field of research, and we love her so much.
And she's cutting edge. I mean, she was cutting edge how many years ago, and we're still talking about it. And we really encourage you to Google her because she has lots of videos. She has lots of things that I think you would find interesting. Excuse me. So we're going to do Four Corners again, but we're going to hope that you'll unmute and have a conversation. So answer this question. Parents do have the capacity to support their child's education. Do you agree, disagree, strongly disagree, strongly agree? Tell us what you think. Parents do have the capacity to support their child's education.
Hi there.
Hi there.
So my take on this is that not necessarily that they do have that, but they should. So parents should have the capacity, not necessarily that they all do, which is unfortunate, but so in a way, I disagree with that.
Okay.
I feel that they should, but not necessarily, like we said before. We don't know everyone's situation at home, parents' lifestyle, everything like that. All the factors that weigh into it.
Great. And I just want to say your picture is making me really hungry. So I'm just going to say that. Full disclosure. What else? Who else? Do you think parents have the capacity to support their child's education?
I want to say in terms of capacity, I think that when considering environmental constraints, socioeconomic constraints, mental health constraints, that capacity might not always exist for every parent or every guardian, but I think every parent or guardian has the capacity in the sense that things can change in their life to give them opportunity. So again, same as Catherine, I don't want to say I strongly disagree or agree because it's just, you don't know anybody's situation. You can be positive and hopeful and supportive, but you really can't be judgmental with this.
I like that. I want to pause on that for a minute because you're right. Everybody has something going on. And nowadays, I think we finally have become much more aware of mental illness and that a lot of our families are burdened with that. So it's good to always have that lens of there may be more to this story. Great. And I see a big comment over there.
It's a great one.
Did you want to read it, Javon?
Oh, sure. Let me get right on that. Okay, so I think it was Caitlin said, as far as parents just sending their kids to school because it's kind of providing daycare as service. She said, could there still be an aspect of caring in there, though? If a child isn't successful in school, the parent needs daycare, most likely due to job life constraints. Will have to deal with frequent parent-teacher conferences, emails, complaints, phone calls, etc. In that sense, they should be in school, even if a majority of it comes, I'm sorry, I just skipped. They should be invested in their child succeeding in school, even if a majority of it comes from the desire to focus on providing for their family.
Yeah,
Wow.
That's a big one, guys. Providing for their families. Yeah.
Yes.
And Caitlin, yes, while you and I may think that should be the case, it isn't always. You can ask for parent-teacher conferences, but that doesn't mean they will always show. You can send emails, make phone calls, but again, that doesn't mean they will always answer you. I don't know how else to explain it other than, yes, come to care. Some do care, and we would like for them to by all means, but it isn't always the case. It's true. It isn't all, it may not be, but what we're hoping is that you're going to see how important this is and that you will be that bridge for these families. So,
I have a comment.
please.
But I completely forgot the question, but I have the comment in my head.
Well, here, I'll read it to you. Parents do have the capacity to support their child's education.
Yes. So I do believe that parents do have the capacity, going off of what Caitlin said. I believe that parents do have the capacity. She said in different that how do they have that capacity? It can be in different ways. I feel like every parent does have the capacity. They just show it in different ways. So like one parent can show the capacity by always writing in the planner. Another parent can have the capacity by just responding to text messages. I just feel like everyone has a different way, even if it's a smidge of capacity, it's there.
Well, that's awesome. You're absolutely right. I have to say, I agree with that. And that's a great comment to kind of help us move forward a little bit. So yeah, and you got from Hannah. Yes, Bianca.
Sometimes that smidge is the beginning of the door opener.
Yes, yes. And we have to learn to value the smidge, which is going to be our new word for the rest of this presentation. Just going to say. All right, so I think we heard Dr. Mapp say, what lens are you going to look at your parents through? And that is so important, because let me tell you, and some of you may already be in the classroom, whether you're a teacher or whether you're a student teaching or whatever, and you will see that some parents, they all look different and they all behave differently. But we want you to look at every parent as if you're seeing families as not part of the problem, but part of the solution. And to see families as not as bystanders, but as co-producers, as partners with you in this whole process, from seeing families as passive participants or adversaries, which a lot of people seem to think that. But we really want you to not see parents as adversaries, but we want you to see them as partners. That's truly where we want to go. Parents as partners with you and the child in this educational journey.
And one thing too, Jenny, when it comes to co-producers, a lot of your families will come to you and say, I can't do that math. I can't do whatever that assignment is. So they automatically think I have nothing to contribute. But like Bianca said too, those smidges do count. And what they do bring to the table is that they know their child best. So they can tell you what they respond to, what they don't respond to. They can give you some background, what worked before and what hasn't worked. So they do have value in that conversation. And as soon as you validate that with them, then they start to see themselves as a co-producer and not as an adversary, getting ready to pound the counter and advocate for their child in the wrong way.
And it's so important to remember too, when you have those interactions with families, it's important to have that positive interaction. Start out with a positive. I think sometimes teachers start out their careers and they sort of get in this way of communicating the bad news first. Really try as you begin your careers to think of starting that conversation in a positive way. So why engage families and communities? Well, family engagement, we've been talking about, we want to reframe it. We want to go from individual responsibility to a shared responsibility. So it's not just the teacher's responsibility, it's the teacher, and it's the parent, and it's the student. We want to move away, like I just said, from deficit-based, adversarial to strength-based and collaborative. That word collaborative, you are a team. Random acts to systemic, add-on to integrated. Events-driven, like those bake sales, which I did a lot of them back in my day, to learning and outcome-driven. And compliance to ownership and continuous improvement. And that's really important. And Javon and I use this term a lot when we think people are checking a box. Don't check a box with your parents. Please be intentional, be authentic with them. And one-time project to sustained. We want things to be sustainable. We don't want to have these one-time big events at your school that you're never going to do again. We want to have things that are ongoing. And then service and advocacy to capacity building.
More than likely, they've got more than one child in the system. So you're really laying that foundation, at least, and showing them how to advocate and how to participate in their child's education just in that little time that they have with you. Okay, so we're going to try to go to this one quickly, but I mentioned earlier Karen Mapp, Guru. I showed you the pie chart of how much time kids are really at school and how we're really looking at repurposing parent conference time. So it's not 15 minutes, let's spend the time talking about behavior and then send them on their way, not with anything really actionable or any real meaningful information coming out about their child and their performance and what they can do to support. So academic parent teacher teams, or APTT, is a program out there that really changes the way we do parent conferences, and it really shares data, and it teaches parents how to not be afraid of data and to ask better questions, and then to have targeted and strategic activities that they do at home to support their children's weak areas.
To improve family engagement, Brevard Public Schools Office of Title I has developed a new program designed to increase student learning and achievement through interactive academic parent-teacher teams, or APTT. APTT is an innovative approach to the traditional parent-teacher conference night, as it is instead a series of 3 whole group meetings known as team meetings. Team meetings are 75 minutes long, and each begins with an icebreaker activity used to welcome families to build and foster a sense of community and teamwork amongst the participants. APTT is currently making a significant impact in 2 area Title I schools, Pinewood Elementary in Mims and Sable Elementary in Melbourne. During the meetings, families are shown student-specific performance data, learn new reading and math skills to practice at home, and put their knowledge to practice by engaging in hands-on activities and games to reinforce concepts. Families are encouraged to communicate with teachers in between meetings if they need additional assistance or guidance to apply the learned skill with their student. Translators are on hand for non-English speaking families. As a perk, childcare is also offered on site to allow families to fully participate in learning more about their student and parent peers. APTT empowers family members to play an active role in their students' learning objectives while allowing teachers to effectively communicate student gains, goals, and opportunities. Through this cross-collaboration, school communities begin to grow and sustain strong partnerships.
So we just love that program so much. It's just really powerful when parents are asking these incredible questions. It's not just how are they behaving. They're saying, how many sight words do they know now? They're looking at graphs. They're using that information the next year to choose the best teacher for their child based on what they've learned about them in the years past. So it's very powerful.
And this is one of those things where we wish we had more time to really go into it. This is something that we could do a whole session on, but the impact of it is, like Javon said, incredible. So here's our next question. I have a plan to actively communicate with families. I'm going to share so we can see you all. So here's the question again. I have a plan to actively communicate with.
Jenny, you're muted.
I have a
it's noisy here. Okay, I want to hear.
Well, I used to work at a preschool before I came into my internship, and we did this. It was called the Parent Engagement Night. and they provided childcare. It was a preschool level, but the parents were able to come in to their child's classroom and they got to be the student. So they participated in circle time and all of that. And they were so blown away. They're like, I had no idea that this goes on. And that this is what they're doing. I thought all they did was play all day. And it really got the parents, they understood like a lot of the, if there was any confrontation, like, oh, like my child's not learning, it literally went away because they are like, wow, they're actually doing something. So my plan is kind of to do that, especially once they have like an open house. My icebreaker would basically be like presenting a lesson to them, obviously not a real thorough one, but something in that framework.
I love that you've been thinking about it, and I love that you saw it in action and you could see the value in it. So that's fabulous, because I understand, and Giovanna and I both understand, if some of you haven't really given it a lot of thought, but we want to encourage you to give it a lot of thought, because this could be a game changer. Yes, Caitlin.
I have two things. I don't technically have a very set out plan because I know that the way you communicate with families kind of is district based too, like what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do. So there might be a form of communication I'm not allowed to use. But I do know two things I want to do is a survey at the beginning of the year, how a parent prefers me to communicate with them, how frequently they prefer communication, what method. And then I also prefer newsletters. I really do, because I'm secondary, so it'd be middle school or high school. I kind of prefer monthly newsletters, just kind of to go over what we covered. And I'm a graphics editor, so I would have fun actually making that.
That's great, and you have given it a lot of thought already. So I think that's a great idea. and the most important piece from a district level person is communicate in a positive, effective way that your parents prefer. Because I love what you just said. I'm going to ask them, how would they like us to communicate with them? Because that's important. And for everybody, it's different. But you know what? Guess which way Giovanna and I think parents prefer to be communicated with. Give us a guess.
Caitlin's doing her thumbs.
Yep.
That's exactly right.
They like it when we send a text. And guess what? They read them.
They read them. The research shows that 98% of families will open a text message. Only 28% of emails get opened by families. And that's partly from the pandemic and us overloading them with 1 million emails with 87,000 steps and links inside of it. But the texting, again, we could do a whole class on just texting and communicating, but it's actionable, it's quick, it's something that they need to do then and there within the next 24 to 48 hours. And it's not something that they're just going to get buried in their inbox. Jenny, there's some comments in there. Also, Catherine said, I may not have an exact plan, but I definitely plan to build strong engagement relationships with my parents.
Okay, let's pause there a minute.
Yeah.
There's a word we've used a lot today, and it's relationships. And I want you to know that you probably have had a lot of classes on a lot of different things, but relationships are key. They're key with your students. They're key with your parents. They're key with your coworkers.
And your custodians and bookkeepers and everybody in the front office.
Yes, I'm telling you, it matters. It matters.
They will save you.
We could do a whole 3-hour class on that. Let me tell you.
Yeah. Hannah said, I don't have a specific plan, but I plan to communicate with them. I feel like it would really just depend on the parents and what works best for them. I'm very open and willing to communicate with them in whatever way works best for them, as long as I'm able to have an open line of communication, for sure.
Very important. It's very important. And so there'll be one thing that might be a challenge for you when you first start out. What do you think that's going to be? Your youth. You know, sometimes an older parent, let's say me-ish, and I see this youngster teaching my children. So really always think about, how to be professional. That's a big piece of this, and how, the words you use and that eye contact, that body language, all that, I'm telling you, it goes a long way, especially with this older generation.
And something that's happening too, as we're retraining and talking to our teachers, is all of a sudden people are very fearful of having a conversation with the family. You are going to have times when you're going to have to deliver some awful news, or they're going to be really mad at something you've done and it's a miscommunication. You know, it's a misstep somewhere along that chain of communication. So don't let one bad parent phone call experience, you know, cause you to never pick up that phone again, and you use that as an excuse. Because again, a whole other class we could do with you on having these tough conversations and how to come back from having, you know, a bad experience with one parent.
And we both have had those experiences, and in our careers more than one.
Yeah.
But you know what? It often has taught me how to be better.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I could have made that a better conversation, but for whatever reason, I didn't. So, you know, when you have those tough times, learn from them. Just keep learning from them. I know you've heard that a lot. That's kind of a.
But just believe
False.
that, because it avoids so many problems later on down the road if you could just buck it up and have that conversation, and don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid. That's a big one. So communication is key to everything. And I have to tell you, to kindness, to be kind and listen. Sometimes parents just want you to listen to them and to show empathy, because when you are talking to a parent, sometimes they're delivering difficult news to you. And it's important for you to listen and to not be sympathetic necessarily, but to show empathy. Enthusiasm, they want to know that you're really excited about this job and that you really do enjoy working with their child. And understanding the value and the importance of that parent-child relationship. It's very important. And they do know their child the best. They truly do. And when you say, hey, I was thinking maybe this might be a strategy. What if you said to the parent, and what do you think? What do you think of that? Do you have any ideas? Remember that give and take. And I'll bet some parents would be like, wow, no one's ever asked. So I love this. Always be sensitive. Remember that you are talking about their most valuable family resource. Their family's future is that child. And I don't know if any of you are parents in this group, but when you are a parent, your children become your world in so many different ways. So just never lose sight of that. So communication, we believe so strongly, has to be two-way. One way, I think schools and school districts are gifted at one-way communication. We send blasts out, we send flyers out, we make announcements, we have marquees, but nobody's talking back to the marquee. It's not a give and take. So we really want you to have an opportunity to have interactive dialogue. And Giovanna and I like this thing called the phone call. Picking up the phone and calling the parents and having a conversation. Even if it's just to introduce yourself in the beginning of the school year, say, hello, I just want to check in with you. In fact, Giovanna and I just did a staff presentation last week, and we said, during this time of COVID and this pandemic, what a wonderful way to kind of break the ice, call parents and just say, hey, I'm just checking in. Just wanted to check in, see how you're doing. It's powerful and it goes a long way. Texting is two-way. Usually people will text you back, but just keep that in mind. I love a good newsletter. I love that because that's a great way to communicate. But along with that newsletter, how are you going to have them communicate back to you as well? So I'm kind of passionate about this one. I feel that communication really starts at the front door. And sometimes I think people forget that. Have you ever walked into a school and nobody says hello to you? Nobody greets you. And I think when you work in a school, everybody is part of that community. And I always felt like it was my duty, I was a school counselor, to greet everyone and to make everyone feel welcome in my school, whether it was at the front door in the front office or whether it was in the hallway. Remember when we used to pass people in the hallway? I hope we can again someday. It's so important. And don't forget your classroom. When you have families coming into your classroom and parents come to see you and you're standing there in front of them and you're presenting or whatever you're doing, think about how you're looking, how you're smiling, and letting them know that this is your passion and how happy you are to be here with their children.
Here's another little tip too that goes a long way is that when you are in the front office, and that is, the open door of welcoming your families, even though you're not the clerk, if you happen to be in there and someone's on the phone and there's a parent, even if you could just acknowledge the parent's presence and say, "Hey, welcome, hi, is there what are you here for?" It might not be something that you can do. You might end up having to pass them off onto someone, but you acknowledge their presence, you make them feel welcome and seen, and it also creates a great school culture too, that you're all there as a wraparound services for your family. So don't forget that too.
I have something to add on to that. That actually happened to me. I got thrown into my position. It was a maternity leave, and she went in 2 weeks early. And so it was a Thursday in the middle of the day. I was there, luckily, and she just told me to go for it. And that Monday morning, I was in the office trying to figure out what I was supposed to be doing. And there was a parent there with a kid. Kind of looks familiar, but like I said, I was thrown in Thursday and didn't really know my kids. And I was like, yeah, hi, how can we help you? They'll be right with you. It's Monday morning, everybody's hectic. And it ended up being my kid that came back from Connect to Face. And the mom was like, thank you so much for helping me. And so it all went full circle, helping me help them. And now, it broadens that communication I have with that parent already.
Absolutely. You're the ambassador.
Right. What an excellent example, because you just never know.
Never know.
So why not just be nice to everybody?
Yeah.
Everybody.
It's like cutting people off in traffic and then you end up going to the same place and parking next to each other. Yeah. So just be nice.
I will never admit to that happening to me, but it happened to me. Yes.
It happens. Yeah.
Definitely. That was a great example. Thank you so much for that. So I feel like we've already sort of talked about this one. Yes, choose communication tools that work for parents and ask them. And it's probably not going to be the same for every parent. So don't forget, you're going to have grandparents in your classrooms too. Please, please hold their hands a little bit, because I want you to always remember, in many cases, if a grandparent is raising a child, something really bad happened. In many cases, not all cases, but in some cases. So be compassionate, be kind, and also spend some time helping them walk through this winding web of education, because it can be overwhelming.
Yeah, and most grandparents are in their 70s. Like you've got in the demographics, the breakdown, but the largest percentage of grandparents raising grandkids are in their 70s. So just think, things are wicked different than anything that they experienced.
That's so true. So what are some of the different ways we communicate with our families? Well, open house is one way. And if Javon and I had our way, we would revamp the way everybody does open house. Because I think sometimes open house scares families. We get so into the weeds of everything that's going to happen, when really we want them to sort of get a feel for an overview of the school year, but also they want to feel comfortable with their child being in school. And if we do come back to school next year, and that's a big if, I don't know if we will, of all years, it's going to be so important to make our families feel comfortable. So, and we communicate with parent conferences. So valuable. Really think about how you do a parent conference when that time comes. Email, phone calls, email. Be careful with emails. Don't ever write an email when you're angry. I'm sure you've had some classes or conversations about email etiquette. I used to be that person people would bring emails to say, should I send this? And usually if you're asking somebody, don't send it. Phone calls. Javon and I love phone calls. They're really powerful. Home visits. How many of you have ever considered or even done a home visit? Anybody?
No.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to plant that seed. It's a valuable piece of building relationships, especially with those families that are the hardest to reach. There's nothing like meeting somebody on their front porch. And it's also important for you to see where your families live, what their community looks like, because we have pictures in our minds, but until we see it with our own eyes, I don't think you can fully understand. So that's another piece. If at the very least in the summer, drive through the neighborhoods where your school population comes from.
And
You'll learn a
Jenny,
lot.
Bianca said that home visits is a huge part of Head Start, and it absolutely is. And
Yes.
if you're really interested in delving a little bit more into family engagement, Jenny always says Head Start has it nailed down. So
Mhm.
you go and you look, and all of their things are applicable K-12. So really give a
Yes.
look at their framework for family engagement.
Yeah, it's excellent.
Could I make a comment?
Please.
Yes.
Yeah, I was a Head Start parent, so that's why I know. So home visits were really great because it gave a really good snapshot of where your student is coming from.
Yep.
So you were able to see a lot. Obviously, you don't comment on it, but it sometimes made it click like, oh, this is a single family home. Now I understand why I don't see dad anymore and stuff like that. So Head Start, man, that program is just amazing.
It is amazing.
It is. And don't be afraid, even though things are still kind of weird, you can still do that model virtually. So I see that there's comments of, seeing teachers do drive-bys and bring books and celebrate birthdays. That's still part of a home visit. You're still seeing them, you're meeting your families where they are, and they truly value that you took the time to learn a little bit more about them.
Can I mention a lot of families don't like home visits though, so that's definitely really important to ask about, because I do know a lot of parents when I was interning that were embarrassed by their homes, and a lot of kids that were embarrassed by their homes. And I interned with FLVS, so none of the students would turn on their cameras, and if we would ask them why, it would usually be something silly or something serious.
Sure.
So
And I guess we should put home visits kind of in quotes, because it could be you physically going there. It could be you doing a Zoom call. It could be you just meeting a family at a Dunkin' Donuts or a community center somewhere in their neighborhood, to where it's still their home turf, but you're not coming into their home, and they may not be comfortable with that. And explaining the why. Why are you doing that? You're not doing this for a DCF report. You're not doing this to judge them or, to see how clean their kids are. You're doing it to learn more about them and their family.
And you know what? I have done a lot of home visits in my career, and that relationship piece, when they realize that Mrs. Gleason really cares about my family, and she wants to help us out, and she knows I can't get there, and the only way they're going to get this letters in time is if I bring it to their door. It's just a way to break the ice. And I've done many a conference sitting on the front step. I don't ever feel like I have to go inside their house, but just the effort that you made to go to their neighborhood even, and their neighborhood. I got to a point where people knew me in the neighborhood, and you're waving as you go by. I mean, they knew I was somebody from outside the neighborhood, but then they knew I cared about the kids in that neighborhood. So, and I do too. I love that book surprise. I think that's a great idea. Do you see all the great things we've learned through this really challenging time? I mean, that would be a great kind of, I'm not really having a home visit, I'm dropping off a book. But that's just, it's kind of going in the side door.
Right. School districts will actually have their teachers. I'm saying school districts in general, not necessarily Brevard, but you will go like the week before during pre-planning and meet your kids and drop off some school supplies and your maybe first day newsletter, and you're meeting your families, in their neighborhood before they come to school. So you've already kind of started to pre-build that relationship.
It's huge. Oh, I'm excited about our future teachers after talking to you guys. Let me tell you.
This is great. Okay, so we're going to speed it up a little bit, but we didn't want to cut this video out because it's super important. It shows just how valuable you reaching out to that family, making that connection, building that relationship, how it can really change. Because if you look at this video, you could see how this relationship could have turned and become very adversarial, but instead it was the opposite, and everybody in this situation won.
Listen very carefully.
Well, immediately after the home visit, I was then invited to a back to school night they were having in Stanton. They gave me the little flyer. I was like, well, we're having a back to school night. It's from this time to this time. Bring the kids, like a meet and greet the teachers and everyone that was going to be there. But one thing I can say about, Stanton period is that it is constant communication, something I never had, something I completely enjoy. And it's not just negative communication, it's constant positive communication. I can be here at home, at work, anywhere, and one of my teachers would send me a text. Or I used to love it, Miss Lucas would send pictures. Take pictures of them doing classwork, and she said, see, look how my Tanae, well, I call her Bird. The school calls her Bird, which I love because it's like a community. They adopted her nickname. So she would send me a text like, look at Bird. She's having a wonderful day today, and she's doing good. But in saying that, that allowed me to hear. I put a trust in Miss Lucas for doing that. So no matter what she said, how she had to say it, what the information is, it made it easier for me to receive it from her. Because she had built this communication, this trust that I never had. So I tell people now friendship. You know what I'm saying? We're not friends to talk every single day, but she's a person that I will always hold in a high regard. She will always have my respect. I really respect Miss Lucas, and I value her so much because not just her, but all the teachers, but like she was the first one to really extend herself to me. And I would get the text, and then one day Tanae had a bad day, and she called me, and I was expecting to hear something good. Oh, she got good on her test, so she did read, and she was like, well, we had a bit of an issue today. I'm like, for real? What happened? Well, Tanae did X, Y, and Z. And I didn't get defensive. I didn't get, well, what do you do? Or what I actually sat back and I listened and I received the information. And I processed the information. For me, that was something different because at that point in time, I felt it like, why am I getting mad? Because normally when you call me on the phone and you telling me something about my child did this, I'm naturally on the defense like, well, what did you do to make my child do this? Or who was messing with her in class because my baby's a good baby. But in this time it was different. And I don't know if it's because of the positive, feedback she gives me every day, the friendship we brought. It just made, when she was telling me what's going on, I took a breath, I stopped and I listened. And then I was like, we actually got to a place where we worked together. I said, well, you know what, since she's having a bad day, can you put her on the phone? And I spoke with her on the phone and I let her know that me and Miss Lucas are working together. We are a team, and if she asks you to do something, you need to treat it as if mommy is asking you to do something. So if she asks you to sit down, you need to sit down. And there was no more problems with Tanae.
I love her. I've watched that video probably 5,000 times, and every time I just I want to cry and hug her because she says, it's like they paid her. She said every single thing that we preach about and we say, really, guys, trust us, if you try it, it's going to work. And there's the proof. It does. I mean, she could have had a friggin' freak out on the phone, when you call her with that bad news. And she said, I sat back and listened. And it's because we had built that positive relationship moving, from the very beginning.
And I love how she said everything Dr. Mapp said. She said everything about communication, the positive, the trust. It was obvious that school saw her through that lens, that can-do lens. So I know that our time is running short. So we're probably going to
skip this video. Yep, skip this one. We'll come back and show you that one.
So this is really important. So this kind of goes with some of the questions we were asking you. And this is really what we believe. We believe that every parent has hopes and dreams for their children and wants the best for them. Every parent. Every parent has the capacity to support their child's learning. And you guys said that. It may not be that they can help with the algebra, but they can help with the support, with the place to do the homework, with the turning the TV off and focusing it's time to get it done. Parents and school staff should be equal partners in the education of children. You know, when we think that we're somehow better than, that defeats what we're trying to build. We are equal partners. And when you work together, I'm telling you, kids will be successful, and they see it. They see the parent respecting the teacher respecting the parent. And the primary responsibility for building partnerships between home and school rests with school leaders and staff. So that is a fact. It's not up to the parent. We have to teach them. We have to model this for them. It's so important, but it really does start with school leaders. And hopefully every one of you one day will be a school leader, and this will be a priority.
Right. And even if you go to a school where family engagement is not a priority, or you go to a Title I school and it's viewed as just simply a compliance item, don't let that change the, oh, am I frozen? I'm freezing. Anyways, don't let that decide how you run your classroom and how you interact with your families. Be that pocket of greatness, you know, and let others see the success that you're having by building those relationships and communicating 2 ways with your families. And other people are going to catch on and, you know, wonder what your secret is.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, last video, we swear, but really this is a great one. This just goes back to everybody is going through something, and parents are sending you the best that they have, and that is their future. And to just sit back sometimes when you've had that bad day and you want to quit, or you want to just, you know, you're super mad at a family, just think back to this video.
Oops.
Or not.
I love seeing the world in their eyes, but when I can't spend time with them, I do feel like I let them down sometimes.
I didn't know how hard work it was until I actually had to do it on my own.
I failed, I think, on a daily basis to live up to my own expectations. I question whether I'm doing a good job every day.
The boundary's too loose, what is right, what is wrong, and you get inundated with all of this information about how to do it and what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong, that you start to second guess yourself.
I wonder what he's thinking all the time, or what he's feeling, because he doesn't really communicate all his feelings and emotions.
My dad passed away almost 2 years ago from cancer. Parents are the most important thing. I don't know how she thinks she's doing as a mother, but sometimes, I mean, you just don't really know the right words to say.
Dear Mom,
I often forget to tell you how much you mean to me.
you always taught me to stay positive, even when it feels like the world has fallen down around me.
I never really told you how much you mean to me.
And that's because there aren't words powerful enough to describe how much you mean to me. I admire your strength and courage. I love you so much. Love, Claire.
Dear Dad, the advice you gave me is to go to college, graduate, and be an honest person.
And I follow these principles, and I will be well off. Okay. Great kid.
Dear Mom, thank you for being such an amazing mom.
When I grow up, I will always remember watching the sunset with you in Hawaii, and all the times you help me feel better when I'm having a bad day. Sorry.
But you always tell me to keep trying and that I can do it.
One of the hardest times was when my friends left me.
I felt useless and unwanted. But even at that time, you supported me. I couldn't have a better mom. Love, Zoe.
This means a lot to me.
Makes me feel like I've done a really good job. So maybe I think I'm only doing a 7, but if you get a kid to write a letter like this, it's got to be closer to 10. Oh, honey, I love you.
Brought tears to your old dad's eye.
Full disclosure, I have seen again that video hundreds of times, and I cried in front of 300 people once when I showed it afterwards. I was just, I don't know, it's so overwhelming. And some of us are parents, some aren't, but we were talking about those smidges. That's a smidge, you know, to just send on the next slide is just a little, you're doing good. So sometimes when you've got those families that they're hard to build that relationship with, maybe you slip this in a backpack and you're doing good. I acknowledge you. I see you. And it might be that they got their kid to school finally on time 3 days in a row. Maybe they came prepared with homework or a pencil, or they had shoes on, or, you know, whatever it is, dig deep and find one positive thing for some of those difficult families and send this home. And just imagine if you were, you know, put yourself in their shoes. If you were to open up a backpack or a communication folder and see a kudos to you, what a game changer that could be.
So we
1 minute over.
Yeah, we tend to end with that video, but we, like we said, we are so honored to be here today and to present to our future. And you are our future. And we want you to know we are available to you. If you want to reach out to us ever, we are more than happy to have a conversation with you, to work with you, whatever you need. We're here to help you.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you both for coming. I put their link to the website that has their contact information in the chat box. So thank you. There's some people you can just tell they're just genuine and what they're really passionate about, and your passion came through. So very much, it's hard to be engaged this late in the evening, and I know everybody on this call is engaged, so thank you. It was awesome. And hopefully everybody will share this with your friends and your peers, and tell them to watch the recording, right? To help them be successful and have that right mindset as far as just establishing that trust and relationship with their parents. That will help them out so much in their career. So thank you guys for joining us. And we'll see you again soon in another Night Ed Talk.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. Thanks everybody.
Nice
Good luck.
Come to Brevard.
We're here.
See you later. Bye.